Michigan music lovers. This is Scott Baker, musician, music journalist, and producer, welcoming you to the Michigan Music History Podcast, covering all the territories of the Mitten. We cast from around the block of the brand new Michigan Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Bay City, Michigan, in the heart of the Great Lakes Bay region. And I'm joined by Michigan music royalty, sitting to the left and right, Dr. J. Gary Johnson of the Michigan Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and MichiganRockandRollLegends.com website, and Sir Fred Reif, Michigan music author, publisher, manager, and musician. Together they have taught, lectured, traveled, hosted, and have been quoted worldwide on all things Michigan music. Chances are you stood next to them at the record store or shoulder to shoulder at concerts over the years. They are the record crate diggers and the library microfishermen that have dug around for the details, the credits, and the lineage that has been part of the backstory of Michigan music. So grab your favorite beverage, hit the cruise, and take a trip back with us as we open up a can of earworms on Michigan's rich music history.
Welcome to the Michigan Music History Podcast Show, channeling through all styles and eras of Michigan music, from before you were born up through this very minute. And now, your host, Scott Baker.
Hey, everybody. We are back at Studio 163 in Essexville, Michigan, just around the block from the brand new Michigan Rock and Roll Legends Hall of Fame out there in, I believe, Washington Street. And once again this week, we are head off by just the two of us, Mr. Fred Reif, Sir Fred, and myself. And Gary's still on vacation, and we're going to have an author's night. That was something that Fred and I discussed back in December when we were tossing the spitball ideas around of what things we'd like to do between the styles of music and the styles of record stores and radio stations and everything Michigan. And I says, we have to have an author's night because our friend, Mr. Kris Englehardt, is in the house. How you doing, Chris?
I'm in the house.
You are in the house.
And it's cold outside, so it's nice to be in this warm little nook and cranny.
It's probably the last week of chilliness, too. I saw the temps for next week.
I hope so.
We had the heat earlier in the month, and here we are at the end of April, and middle of April, and ice cold again. Yeah. But Chris, I met back in the 90s when Beatles Undercover was released. I went to his book signing, I believe, and I don't know, I think I did a story on him maybe for the Times back in the day. And he followed that up not too long ago with the one called The Beatles Deeper Undercover. Well, he was able to track down some more of the in-depth, behind-the-scenes Beatles sessions. And one of the big things that Chris got to do around 2000, 2001 upon its release was From Grand Funk to Grace, the authorized biography of Mark Farner, Michigan's own Grand Funk man, the original MF. That was a huge, huge thing, especially on the heels of the funk reunion that went kind of haywire, and he was able to tell a story back then. And I'm sure, I remember hearing a few things off the record back then, but I'm sure Chris has got even more cool stories and crazy things to add to those the book anecdotes that he gave us. Have you talked to Mark at all?
We text back and forth and email occasionally, and I spoke with him, maybe 4 or 5 weeks ago. He just got done doing a bit with Alice Cooper on this Detroit rock and roll music album that Cooper put together with, he came back to Michigan with his producer Bob Ezrin and got Johnny B. Bedanjik and Farner and Wayne Kramer and other people and Michigan people to record a rock and roll album in Detroit. And that's out, I believe, now. And so Mark was involved in that project, and we talked about that. But Mark and my relationship is less musical these days and more personal and more about families and kids and wives, and so our relationship has evolved to a large extent away from music and more into a very personal and private relationship. So I don't like to talk about Mark too much that way. But but Mark will. Mark is not someone who's easily bridled, let's say. So,
I remember a few things we've done with Mark over the years with the local songwriters guilds, and Mark will lay it on the line.
Yeah.
And he will let everybody know his feelings. He has never held it back. And,
no, he doesn't.
I always loved that about him.
Yeah. But I cherish and guard our relationship, and I always make sure that I respect his privacy and his friendship. So
that's how relationships come down the line. I like myself with Dick Wagner back in the day, or Larry McRae right now. Even two guys one that was local and one that still is, and we were more interested on what you're cooking on the grill tonight than it was music talk after a while. And it was just that kind of stuff that would bore the average person looking for music stuff.
Right.
But, the cool thing about all of them is they told their stories, they believed in themselves. And that's one thing about Mark, and it's all laid out right in the book pretty nicely there, too.
One of the things, just because it was on the plate today, I was writing a chapter on the Hollywood vampires, and for my new book, Beatles Fully Uncovered. And Alice had recently done an interview about this new album with Mark, the Detroit rock thing. And he was talking about ego and on stage. And he said, when you're on stage, if you don't have that ego to be the penultimate rock star, you don't belong up there. And when you're up there and you are that rock star and you play that role, you have to deliver the goods. He said, but when you leave that stage, it's okay to be just a regular guy again. You can be a regular guy when you leave the stage and walk away from that persona. But when you're on that stage, it's critical. It's important because your audience doesn't want to see the guy that's cooking burgers. They want to see
firsthand here.
They want to see the rock star. They want to see this ego, this persona, and you have to deliver the great music. And I thought, that's really great, because having known a lot of these people over the years, I see them as regular people who put their pants on one leg at a time and are just normal people that have kids and wives and house payments and whatever it is you go through in life. But then on the other side of that coin, these are people that we recognize and admire because they are somebody unique. They go out and they go on stage and they put on a show and they entertain us and they deliver. And they are these rock stars for an hour and a half on stage. They play the persona, and then they go off and they're normal, regular, or as normal as any of us are, human beings.
Right.
And I think that's refreshing, and it builds, some degree of confidence that people can switch. They can go between being the star and
Alice Cooper and Vincent Furnier.
Yeah, two different people,
Right.
And I mean, he's a very down-to-earth guy. If you've ever met Alice Cooper, he's just, he actually played at our high school. I was involved in bringing about in May of 1971 at our high school, John Glenn High School. I still have the ticket. Alice Cooper played there, and it was the last time they allowed rock and roll at John Glenn for about the next 20 years.
We this is great because I want to get into more of that, because we've had 2 or 3 podcasts already where that's came up, and also the Alice Cooper thing. We covered the new Detroit Stories album.
Yeah,
we did a little story on that and about who played on what and all that. So that album hit #1 the week after, actually following that up. So we've done a little bit. And the crazy story is Gary, the recent podcast that came out, Gary Asel said he put on a play at John Glenn.
Oh,
and
yeah,
they had those subwoofers in the back, and they hit the subwoofers for the special part in the show, and pillow feathers were still falling from the ceiling from Cooper's time there. That's great. And I think that episode came up today, episode 6. I think that was in today's episode.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's great. Yeah, so you were part of that, man. I wonder if we can get a copy of that ticket or something.
I have the ticket. I still have it.
Because Gary Johnson might want to do something with that, the Hall of Fame. That is so cool.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Wow. Now I know Fred, being an author himself, he's done a lot of the blues and jazz legends from Michigan. Did you notice the persona? I mean, you got to perform with a lot of them too, so it was a little bit different, but the persona like Farner and Kris have been talking about.
Well, like Lazy Lester was Lazy Lester.
24/7.
24/7. He wasn't Lazy Lester on stage, and Leslie Johnson, after he got off, he was always. Same as most of them, Lightning Slim, Boogie Woogie Red.
Yeah.
They all were pretty much their persona.
So they were always in character.
Right.
Yeah.
I noticed that meeting some blues guys and doing interviews with them. It's funny, I was just talking about this to somebody at work this week, but the blues guys always seem to have their show going. They're always in promo mode, always promoting, doing their thing, being themselves. Kind of that's built into the system. And it's the rock guys that have to turn on the big show on and off. And I did see I could feel that, I could see that with who I've met over the years, from Cooper to Mark to, any of those blues guys that we've talked about on any of the former podcasts. But I think what's funny is I was just telling a coworker, back to that story this week, that Ted Nugent, talking to him, or I've met Rob Zombie years ago, and talking to them is like talking to you and I right now. We're all having hangout time. We're all chatting. As soon as they hear that the mic is ready to record for the interview or whatever,
they go.
It's immediate.
Yeah.
180 and bam.
Yep. Yeah.
And it's like, okay, because Zombie's all hanging out backstage talking, just regular talking. Yeah, what you guys up to? Blah, blah, blah. Let's get a picture. And it was like Evil Man just appeared out of nowhere, and then he's like, hey, the voice came out and everything. And then all of a sudden I went back away and he's back to talking. But as soon as the camera or recording unit came on, same with Ted. Hey, I'm going to be a little late for their interview. We'll talk later. Okay. Hey, how you been? Good, man. What's going on? Not much. Are you recording? Not yet. Now I am. All right. The game is on. It's that persona. That's cool that they could turn it on and turn it off. I think the blues guys worked so hard to get to the stage. Sometimes I wonder if it became, that's their lifestyle. But the rock guys, I don't know, there's a different feel there.
And everybody's different.
And everybody's different. Yeah. True. Yeah.
There's some that just can't turn it off. Steven Tyler is one that I don't think can turn it off.
Yeah, you've met a million people, so you probably got a few good stories on who can and who can't turn that off. I forgot you spent some time with him. Seems like he'd be interesting to meet over the years. He's always seems got the rock thing going on. Although I've read some really cool things when he's doing his solo album, how he's helping out some people and doing, you could say his heart is still huge. He doesn't always have to be in rocker mode, but I can imagine if we were talking with him, it would be like that. So you're writing a new book, Beatles Deeper Undercover?
Beatles Fully Uncovered. It started out with Beatles Undercover, which was really the title evolved out of the fact that the Beatles very early in their career, for contractual reasons, had to keep any collaborations or contributions to other artists' recordings somewhat secret because of record labels and contracts. And then then I did a greatly revised and updated version of that 10 years later called Beatles Deeper Undercover, because there was a whole lot more that was uncovered. And the book went from about 180 artists to about 250 artists. And here we are 10 years since that book was released in 2010. And with COVID lockdown, I was kind of like banging my head against every wall in the house. What do I do? And my wife said, well, you know what you do what you love. You're right. So I contacted my publisher in Toronto and I said, you know what? I think, it's been 10 years. Do we want to do another updated version of Beatles Undercover? And he said, yeah, sure. He said, the book's been out of print for a long time. I was thinking about reprinting it anyway. And he said, if you think you have enough material to do an updated version, let me know. So I said, well, I'll get back with you in a week or two. And I came up with about 40 new artists, which is what I'd come up with the last time to do an update. And I said, is 40 enough? And he says, more than enough. Well, a year later, I'm up to 70. So we are almost at 400 new artists, not new artists, but 400 artists in this new book. Each artist is a chapter. So there are 400 chapters, i.e. 400 artists, that one or more of the Beatles contributed to on a recording, and in many cases, multiple recordings. So we're talking about recording entries in approaching 2,000. 2,000, imagine 2,000 recordings that one or more of the Beatles contributed to on another artist's recording. Since like 1960.
Wow.
It's amazing. It's amazing the amount of course, and given the fact that there are only 2 Beatles left alive since 2001, so you have Ringo and Paul, it's phenomenal the amount of work at these guys at 80 years of age that are out there playing on young kids' albums, playing with Kanye West, playing with Rihanna, playing with Taylor Swift, playing with people that you wouldn't imagine, these 80-year-old icons of generations playing, contributing, collaborating with these artists, either live or in the studio. It's refreshing, to say the least, and an eye-opener. So this new book is going to be jam-packed with all kinds of new revelations about recordings that you never would have guessed that Paul McCartney or Ringo Starr play on or produced or co-wrote or whatever.
I remember when I interviewed you before about the books, and you always said that if you'd open one door and 2 more would get open unexpectedly.
It's absolutely true.
And give us an example of this time. What blew your mind, if you want to give it away, or what's something that you can tell us so that you're like, you just absolutely can't believe that you missed all these times?
Well, here's one that I missed. Al Cooper, who I think people in this room know, and certainly has worked with Leonard Skinner and their hits, and Bob Dylan and
Blood, Sweat and Tears.
Yeah, all kinds of people. So Al Cooper is, and he's aging. He's got some health issues, and I had come across a tip from somebody that said, I think Al did something with George Harrison when he was working on the All Things Must Pass. No, it was the Somewhere in England album.
Okay.
But it was the song All Those Years Ago that was not originally a tribute to John Lennon, but became one following his death. And Al had just moved to England at the time and took his girlfriend there with him. Her name was Patty Hyde. She was an artist. And she ended up being, long story short, jump ahead a little bit, she ended up marrying Cheech Marin from Cheech and Chong. But there was between Al, who worked on George's album Somewhere in England, and Patty, Al wanted to do an old Phil Spector, Ellie Greenwich song called He Hit Me and It Felt Like a Kiss. And they recorded the song. Al wanted to have Patty, wanted to launch her in a singing career. But she wasn't terribly thrilled about the idea. So during recordings right after the assassination of John Lennon, they recorded this song drunk late one night with George laying down this incredible slide guitar that George is so famous for on this He Hit Me, It Felt Like a Kiss, this old Phil Spector song that Al Cooper had played on, did most of the instrumentations on, along with some of the other background backing musicians that they used on the Somewhere in England recordings. But the song was never released and was buried since, what was it, 1980? So we're talking 40 years here, folks. This song has never seen the light of day. And of course, Patty and Al, I start ringing up, dialing up the phone, and hey, Al, what about this? What about that? What happened? What was the evolution and the genesis of this recording? And then I got a hold of his ex-girlfriend, Patty, out in LA, and put the whole chapter together in this great story about how they recorded this song that is yet to ever be released or see the light of day, that has this amazing, brilliant George Harrison slide guitar piece in the middle of the song. And so that was one of those things. Missed it in the first book, missed it in the second book. Lo and behold, and I'm sure there's plenty more of those kind of things, those nuggets out there, that have never been documented, that are laying to waste in some studio library or archive somewhere that unfortunately our ears have not gotten to hear. But this time, your ears will get to hear it. So should be interesting.
Are you going to be able to include that on your CD that you sometimes include with the book?
Probably not. No.
So it'll be through Al Cooper's archives.
Yeah, well, Al actually does. He has or will feature it in his. He does have an archive series online and similar sort of a podcast type thing. So it has creeped out there in the last 6 months, but it's amazing. Not so much for the song itself, but Harrison's slide guitar solo on it just stands out.
That's cool. So, yeah. Well, that's great, and it's current, and it's. Yeah. How did who tickled that fancy? Was that something that Al kind of spewed, or is that something that you heard through someone else and you had to go to him?
It came through a variety of sources. It came through Al, it came through his ex-girlfriend, and it came through a guy by the name of Tom Frangione, who was on the Beatles channel on Sirius XM.
Right.
It's one of the main guys on that deal. So he tipped me off to it. He said, well, Al's going to be on the show, and he's bringing this song along that George Harrison plays on that's never been released. So.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
One thing I find fascinating, too, about both Fred and yourself, you guys were able to get some publishing or find some music to add to your books over the years. And Fred got even into the publishing with the artists themselves a lot of times, but you both have audio recordings that are featured in the books that you guys sell. And tell me a little bit about, maybe you guys want to discuss that a little bit. How does that work out for you guys? How did it happen for you, Fred? How did you get a hold of them?
Well, for me, I had a recording from 1945, and it was live at the Rolling Green Club, or turned out to be a golf course later on. But 1945, and Jerry Simpson, who I met early on and who worked at the Hoyt Library in downtown Saginaw, who every time I went in there, he was just a wealth of information. So throughout the years, we became friends, and I ended up him giving me his jazz collection, all his memorabilia. And one of them was a reel-to-reel tape of this 1945 set that they played at the club. And it was pretty good, actually. And he also produced in 1955 a jazz concert at Pit and Balcony, the Playhouse in Saginaw. Yeah. And that was, I mastered it. I had it mastered and cleaned it up. And so I put that with the first 100 people who bought my first book, got that CD. I was going to do it more, but it just got too expensive.
Yeah. And Kris, yours came through various sources, right?
Yeah, and Roy Sakala, who was the chief engineer and owner of Record Plant Studios in New York back in the day in the 60s and 70s, had, and fortunately, because a lot of these tapes ended up being destroyed in a fire, but prior to that I was able to get copies of them that Roy and Yoko Ono allowed me to get permission to use in my first book that John Lennon had produced.
Wow. And
co-written one of the songs called Incantation. But doing the CD thing in the book today, books,
not like it used to be.
Yeah, everything's changed. Everything, the books, it's Kindle, everything. It's almost as though a physical media is a thing of the past, sadly.
Yeah.
I mean, with CDs and vinyl, and so everything.
Now it's download codes
It's
and
digitized.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
yeah. But I remember that was a really cool feature
Yeah.
that not many people did, but it was a hotbed of ideas back in the day for authors. And being a music follower, I thought that was pretty fascinating. And you guys both were able to hop on that a little bit.
yeah. There was a brief period there where that was, a cool thing to do, and you could do it, and it was fairly affordable. But sadly, I
Right.
think that it's kind of times past that genre.
Now, having talked about the music that both of you have delved into over the years, you both have massive collections. And I remember, Kris, you had one of the biggest Beatles collections of anybody, if not the biggest. And you were at one point, I think the last we hung out about 10 years back when that new book came out, you were selling it off at the time or trying to?
I did. I sold off the vinyl. It got to a point where I thought, well, my son's not interested, my wife's not interested. I don't have a turntable. All the music is available. I didn't need reams and reams and huge rooms filled with vinyl. And I thought the iron was hot. It was time to strike. The market was good in terms of selling it, and I love to travel. That's my great passion and hobby in life. And so I sold off the vinyl, not the music, but I have all the music. But I sold off all the 45s and all the 12-inch LPs and EPs and whatever, and memorabilia. And in the next 10 years, traveled in over 70 different countries around the world.
Did you hold on to any of that? Any of the music?
I have all the music, but
I mean, is there any of the collection itself that you hold on to?
the only part of the collection itself that I have held on to are anything that is autographed.
Okay, so you kept your autograph copies of
Kept all the
That's
autograph
beautiful.
copies,
Yeah.
yeah.
You have a lot of stuff personalized too, which is not helpful for a lot of people buying autographs.
Yeah, no, it's not, but
But it's
doesn't
perfect
matter.
for you.
It's perfect for me.
I know
That's
exactly that feeling. My kids are going through the garage grabbing CDs. I have no place to put them. I have them tallied on the computer, and there was up to 15,000 CDs out there.
And all the photographs to go along with all.
Yeah.
those. Everything's documented.
That's so cool. And my kids are like, "Dad, you got these signed." I'm like, someday you guys are going to enjoy that. If you keep liking music, because it's getting the autographs was a pretty cool thing for a music lover.
Yeah, absolutely it is.
And I've been to Fred's. His apartment is just jam packed. You trip over a record and fall into a reel and dive into a tape, and then you're on a DVD. He's got everything going on in there. He's still trying to find a way to. He asked me because we were talking about getting reel to reels bounced, because I have a studio at my house too, and I got 2 reel to reel things. I guess you gotta get them cleaned up and fixed. And he's got pre-reel to reels. What are those called?
Wire recordings.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
I have
Seriously?
the player also.
God.
I transferred everything that this person gave me on the wire recordings, the whole big box. A friend of mine taught me how to figure out how to set it up to my computer. So I got 14 or 15 CDs worth of
Wow.
music that came off these wire recordings.
yeah.
That's unbelievable.
And the sound quality is excellent. I mean, I think it's almost as good as today.
That's
I mean,
incredible.
it's amazing.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. I've never seen anything until he showed me a box of those. I was like, what are those? He's like,
Well, then another jazz person, his son, he didn't want all his father's reel-to-reels anymore. So he called me up and said, Fred, I'm going to give them to you. And I said, really? Okay. But there were like 6 boxes of big reel-to-reel tapes.
yeah,
And
we got to get
figure
them
out how to
bounced
play
at some
them.
point. Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, I've got about 400 hours worth of mini cassettes of interviews.
Oh.
That's what I have. Mini cassettes and mini discs was my thing back in the day. I have 2 full bags of mini discs with all my phoners and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. and I don't even have a mini disc player out and about anymore. I'm sure I could find one that's still, pliable, but incredible. I remember Chris's collection, though. He was like, I got the green label, the yellow label, the white label, the blue label, all the same 45, and I'm like, he's got everything. He had it. You want to talk about Goldmine Standard collection? That was the Goldmine Standard collection. That's how he collected his stuff, and yeah, you both had fantastic music collections, and that goes with being a music-loving author. And here we are, Michigan guys, and it's pretty cool. I love that. That's a big deal to me. I think most music people listening to this podcast find the collections pretty fantastic as well as anything else.
I have a theory. I don't even think it's a theory, because if you can prove it, it's not a theory. But I believe that the reason that Michigan is so rich in music is because of the auto industry. And this has to do with, post-World War I industrial era in America. And you had all of these people from the poor, rural, agrarian South, Arkansas, Mississippi, black and white,
Right.
that migrated up to Michigan to work in the factories. And what they brought with them was their music. They brought the blues, the blacks, they brought the jazz, the blacks did, the white hillbillies brought the bluegrass and country, and all of that filtered up the Mississippi River into the Ohio Valley and up into Michigan, where you had all these auto factories, because these people were poor and they needed jobs and they needed work, and they settled in Michigan. And they brought those traditions, those musical traditions with them, that I believe a generation or two later gave us Motown, gave us Grand Funk, gave us the R&B, gave us Bob Seger, gave us that music. And so I'm convinced that that is one of the reasons that Michigan stands out more so than, say, Wisconsin or Minnesota or Indiana or some of these surrounding states. Michigan was really a focal point for people who migrated from the South, black and white, in that Depression era, post-war era, baby boom era, that came up for a better life and for jobs and opportunity, and brought that rich musical heritage and tradition with them. And then that synthesized into what became MC5, Motown, Bob Seger, Mark Farner, Grand Funk, whatever, Ted Nugent. Yeah, I really believe, that was the fertile ground and the genesis of what blossomed into the Michigan music scene.
That makes total sense. Yeah. And then they go and do the put their automobiles together, and the loud factories come home at night. They needed to relax.
Hard Rock Detroit, WRIF, Motor City Rock.
Yeah. Turn it up.
For sure.
Yeah. Then in your interviews, Fred, from Saginaw to Ann Arbor, you've had a similar thing.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And it's also, the Mexicans brought up their music, and that's why,
Tiano, which,
Yeah.
in Saginaw,
Work in the fields, yeah.
and
huge.
the Polish music, the polkas are just tremendous, and like around Bay City and Frankenmuth, and everything stands out. I mean, the Michigan music went worldwide for a lot of years here for that, and all those styles.
Yeah, I think Bobby Balderrama told me once that his father, after, they came up as migrant workers, got a job at one of the General Motors plants. And that's how they ended up staying here.
Really? Okay. Question Marks guitar player. Yeah, Bobby. We got to get him on an episode. Yeah, he'd come in a heartbeat if he's available. I love Bobby.
Yeah, we're in contact a lot, but he's not coming out. Maybe I hope he's got his shots.
Yeah. The COVID's kept everybody away. That's for sure.
Right.
The musicians are hit and miss on that whole thing. Some are itching and scratching to get out and do anything, and the other ones are like, we will not go anywhere until we get confirmation that it's about over and we got our shots. Which is fair. Everybody's different.
Yeah, and a lot of that is business too. A lot of that's insurance and corporate and shit that they have to sign and put up with and waiver, and it's more complicated. And depending on where you go, I mean, I've talked to some musicians that like, well, we feel safe. We're all vaccinated, but it's a matter of venues, it's a matter of liabilities, it's a matter of contracts and, and booking, and it gets very, very complicated and very muddy and weeded. So it's
that's true.
Not as simple as it seems.
True. And when do you see your new book then, Kris, on the horizon? Well,
if I spend any more time here, it'll probably be next year, but I'm struggling. My deadline, my publisher's deadline, of course, ideally you want a book out for the fall Christmas season. You want it out by no later than October 1st, or at the very latest November 1st for the fall Christmas marketing season, which means I have to have it to my publisher on the 1st of June, and then the proofs and the come back 1st of July, and then I have to go through those, and by no later than the 1st of August, and that's assuming that there's not a backup at printing houses. So it's
it's a challenge. Yeah.
It's a challenge. I got to be on it. I've been on it I started literally on the 1st of March last year, and I knew it would take a year, and I've actually made great progress, more than I expected. But I think that's due in large part to the fact that, COVID was a blessing and a curse, because, I couldn't really travel, which I love to do. So I was stuck at home writing. So I got a lot done.
There you are. And Fred's, he told us in episode 2 about the book he's writing on. And you want to refresh us with what book that is and when do you think it's going to come out, Fred?
Well, it's kind of volume 2 of my first book on mid-Michigan musicians. And this one was going from the late 40s up until early 70s. I'm not sure when it'll be out, probably next year.
That's what you're saying.
I keep finding new information. And, I put, I put that thing on polka bands, and I just got swamped.
Yeah.
Had no idea. But also, I keep finding out about, I found out about a new R&B guy today that was from Flint and made a couple of big, charted records that I had never heard of before. And I'm kind of going to add some people from Flint in it because they also played in Saginaw.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
But, I want to be, I'm not a completist per se, but, I want to
get in the ballpark.
Yeah.
Now, you are also adding a chapter on polkas, chapter on piano.
Yes, but only, for the people out there, only about 5 polka bands.
Oh, okay.
And they are the ones that, that were made a lot of records and were pretty popular throughout the years. I'm not going to be adding any of the newer ones from, right now.
Right.
Fred, have you looked into it all? Any of the old Winona Park casinos out there and the venues that were done in the 30s and 40s? Frank Sinatra, all kinds of people played in these venues around here that I wasn't aware of until, maybe 10 years ago when I did my book on Aerosmith, that Joe Perry's ex-wife's father, his name was Nick Jarrett, played in Tommy Dorsey's band, and they played out at the Winona Beach.
Wow.
Yeah, these guys were doing the circuit back in the 30s, big band,
Right.
and doing beach, places probably like Cedar Point and Winona Beach and other places. And we talked about Idlewild the other day when you were out. What a legend and a wealth of Michigan music history that is. That I don't think.
Where's that at? Idlewild?
Yeah, it's over by Hart, over by south of Cadillac.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was a huge venue for black artists during the kind of Jim Crow era, where they couldn't really get a gig, because they were segregated audiences, and these black blues and jazz players would come up from Chicago and St. Louis and Detroit and play in this little. It was kind of like a black camp club. Mm-hmm. How would you describe it, Fred?
Yeah, that's it's like I think like the Paradise, even though it was real plush and everything, it's like a roadhouse. Back then.
Pretty sophisticated, pretty established.
Oh, I have a lot of pictures of the inside of the club, and I've had a chapter in each of my books on Idlewild, and I'll be adding another one in my new book, just because there's just so much information.
Fascinating story.
I have a lot of photos that were given to me to use.
Wow.
Just got to figure out who some of the people are.
Yeah, that's a fascinating story, I think.
No,
it is.
Your Aerosmith book, I forgot to mention that earlier. What's that one?
It was originally titled Married to Aerosmith. It was written with all the ex-wives and girlfriends of members of the band, and it was a concept I came up with that I thought would be very marketable, and it still is. But unfortunately, I ran into a nightmare of legal hurdles that seemed to pop up like mushrooms in spring, and it reached a point where the reward was not worth the risk.
That never came out then.
It never came out. It's finished. Manuscript is on my library shelf in my office, fully completed. Fascinating story.
I remember that because you were going through so many phone calls of legal crap back then.
Yeah. So I just felt, you know what? I don't have enough liability insurance to tackle MFer,
Yeah. Wow. I forgot all about that book.
Yeah, me too, fortunately. Because this is about 3 years worth of work and a fair amount of money pumped into that, and hundreds of hours of interviews, and it's absolutely a fantastic story. But too many fingers in the, too many people stirring the pot, too many fingers in the pie, so to speak, and it got ugly.
Dang. Oh, wow.
Yeah, so when I'm dead, somebody can put it out and they can't sue me.
Oh, man. So do you have anything in your foreseeable future different outside of putting the Beatles books together? Or
yeah, staying alive, staying healthy,
just staying
alive, battling the rusting old Betsy of a car that I live in, called the human body that ages and fails, and so I have to deal with that daily, and my wife's struggles with her illnesses, and watching my kids and grandkids enjoy life and grow old. And if a great biography offer comes along, I was trying desperately to do a book with Al Jardine of the Beach Boys, and we talked quite a bit about it, and I think the politics of that band got in the way as well. His working relationship with that band, I think, has prohibited him from feeling free enough to proceed with that project. I would love to do that project, but it didn't come together. And if another great project were to present itself that I knew I had the passion and the interest in doing, and because if you don't have the passion, forget it. It's not going to be a good book. And then again, the dynamics of the market have changed to such a degree that books have become almost archaic. So that's a bit disconcerting, to have to face that reality. But I'm 70 years old and I'm still in relatively good health, and I'm having fun, and I want to continue to travel and spend time with the kids and the grandkids and the wife. And if a great, make me an offer I can't refuse kind of book comes along, I'm game, as long as I, enough brain cells are left to get it together and do it and get up in the morning and just face, because if you're a writer, it's a compulsion, and you go into a room and you lock yourself in there pretty much, and much to the dismay of the people around you that love you, because you don't come out for a while, and you're very focused, and it can be stressful.
Yeah. Yeah. I got you there. That's good to hear, though, that you're if the right thing came along, because you never know whose ears pop this on and they see what you've done. And it's funny is I noticed too, and I wonder if this actually pops up in your new book, and it was a question I had for you for tonight. But Danny Harrison has reopened Dark Horse Records. Has anything come your way in regards to that, or the new?
Slow and painful. I mean, the promises have been long, but the delivery has been short. There's just so much there. I mean, a lot there, and it's just seems to be like, pulling hen's teeth. The 50th anniversary of All Things Must Pass, which was supposed to get a full and complete reissue. Well,
It came and went. Yeah.
And there's been a lot of that in that camp. I'm not quite sure what the problem is there, but they've been, to use the word stingy, very in terms of what they've included on reissues. Certainly not as generous as, say, Yoko's camp with John's stuff. There's a new 5 CD, I think 1 or 2 DVD set coming out of the Plastic Ono Band thing here at the end of the month. The first John Lennon solo album, which is going to be amazing. I mean, I know it's on it, and it's a treasure. Just like the Imagine one was that they did a few years ago. And McCartney's been coming out with his Archive series, which is, for the most part, very well done, more so in terms of the physicality of it, in terms of visuals and documentation, a little weak on the unreleased recordings, but nonetheless, some of them have been pretty rewarding for that and for videos. But the Harrison stuff has been long in coming.
What's funny is that was one of my questions for you. On top of that was, why is the delay happening? It's like All Things Must Pass 50 that was already on the docket. That was already a talk. Dark Horse Records were a talk at the start of COVID.
Nothing's come from that.
And one album just got released like last week or something for the first time. And it wasn't even that album. Maybe Danny's doing a new record on his own.
I don't know. I don't get it, and so I don't know. I don't know any more than you do on that. It's disappointing and frustrating. I certainly hope at some point the floodgates will open before I'm 6 feet under, because,
There's a lot of cool stuff that George got involved in, man. I bet there's a ton of stuff
There actually is. And same with McCartney. I mean, his Archive series, he still only released about a third of what was scheduled to be released. And I mean, my God, the man's 80 years old.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm 70, and am I going to be around to buy these? Is he going to be around to release them? And I mean, I don't know what they're waiting for, but
right. At least Neil Young's doing something about his stuff.
Yeah, and other people are too. But it is what it is. I mean, we had to wait a whole extra year. I find it ironic that the Beatles' Let It Be 50th anniversary. It was the only Beatle album that ever got delayed by a year was Let It Be. So now here we are 50 years later, the only 50th anniversary Beatle album that ever got delayed by 8 years. Is what it'd be.
Ironic.
How ironic. Yeah. So, yeah.
That's so crazy. That video is supposed to come out this fall, that new movie.
Yeah. Now they've moved that back even later.
Did they? Yeah. Oh, my gosh. Yeah, it's crazy world we're living in right now, especially the digital thing. I think that put a lot of stops into a lot of the movement on the issuing of the archives for a lot of musicians. Do you know of any Grand Funk or you tuned into any of that? Like, are they going to do something?
I haven't talked to Mark about any of that. That again, as I said earlier, that's not
what you talk about. Right.
That's not what we talk about.
Right. I'm just wondering if somebody's got any intel, because someone said there is something coming out from the Grand Funk. And I can't remember where I read in passing, but I know that they're up for an anniversary of some sort, or was it 50th year of the Shea Show or something. I can't remember what it is.
It's an absolute, there's a lot of dates, but it's an absolute pity that those three guys just can't put it together and go out and do some shows.
Yeah. And they're still so good.
They are. When those three get to, it's kind of that Beatle thing. There's that chemistry, 2 is not 3, 1 is not 3, 4 is not 3, 3 is 3. Mm-hmm. And when those three come together, there is a certain chemistry that there's an alchemy that
takes over.
Gold.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's like that, but it's true.
Wasn't Don Brewer playing with Seeger? I know.
Yes, he's played with Seeger on and off for many years. I don't know, if he did on the last tour or not, but and Craig Frost as well.
Oh,
Craig Frost as well.
Mm-hmm. He just had a birthday the other day.
Yeah,
I saw him with a reunion of the Bossmen. He played keyboards with them.
Craig Frost? Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, at the Wyagogo. It was a reunion of the Wyagogo dances.
Oh, what year?
Now that was like 15, 20 years ago.
All right. Wow.
I got photos of it.
I remember when the Bossmen did their thing, but I don't recall that with Craig Frost playing keys. That's cool.
I don't know that Craig ever played originally with the Bossmen, though, did he?
No, I don't think so. I think they introduced him as friend and...
Right.
No, Farner was in the last version of the Bossmen, right?
That is correct. Right. That is correct.
Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah, I didn't even know he lived in Bay City.
Yes,
Mark
he did.
Farner, until
he did.
You told me the other day.
Till he got caught with at that time, illegal substances, no longer, and was pretty much run out of town.
Oh.
That kind of goes with Gary's story of how the Grand Funk met each other for the first time out at Delta Promotions. That's out correct. There on 15.
Right on Euclid.
On Euclid, the original Delta Promotions. Yeah. That's wild. And it's all right around here.
Yeah.
There's going to be some cool stuff, I'm sure, in Gary's Hall of Fame. We'll have to ask him what he's getting from that camp anyway, when he gets back. But anything else you guys want to add to the podcast? It's been a pretty good day.
Well, thank you. I want to add that. I've had a good time, enjoyed our chat, and hopefully we've enlightened a few people out there about Michigan music and the rock and roll scene.
A couple authors getting to tell two different tales here from around the state. That's kind of cool itself. I mean, two different styles of music. And Fred Reif and Kris Englehardt. And thank you both for joining us today. And Sir Fred, it's always good to have your little input there, man.
Scott, thank you so much. Thanks for the invite. Appreciate it.
Chris, will you come back, buddy? And,
absolutely.
Because we want to talk more down the line when Gary gets back home and gets involved in it again. So
bring a stack of new books in.
Yeah. Well, from Studio 163 in Essexville, we want to thank everybody for tuning in. And our authors episode was a hit. And thank you, Chris, once again.
Not a problem.
For making the trek. And Fred, it's always good seeing you, buddy. We'll talk to you guys all soon.
Thank you for tuning in. Additionally, Dr. J can be reached at MichiganRockAndRollLegends.com. Sir Fred can be hit up at FredRife.com. and Scott through scottbakermusic.com. You can also search Michigan Music History Podcast on Facebook and YouTube. You've been listening to the MMHP in the 989. From all of us at the podcast, we want to thank you for tuning in.
Yeah, I want to do after this book, my next project, but I don't know who would read it. It's like the history of washboard playing.
That would be a really niche.
I've got all the information. I've collected that years ago. Down in Ann Arbor, I went to see this, because you got to see this young group, this bluegrass band called Appleseed Collection.
Mm-hmm.
They have a washboard player, and all the guys in the band have real long hair and beards. Well, the washboard player looked like me in 1970. Really? And the band sounded just like, so it was really, I'm going, why are all the ladies, there were so many women at this gig. They loved all these guys in the band, and I thought, okay, it's all about